Hello to you all my viewers, welcome to Geonodes Daily series where we do something cool in geometry nodes and we try to do it as fast as possible. Anyway, for this project was not so fast. This is the ninth part, the last part of this mini series to recreate this very cool sci-fi generator. We did a lot of stuff and a lot of effects, as you can see. And today we are going to focus on this last part, the reactor core that you see here. And I came up with this because I tried to do some volumetrics and things were getting too heavy on the machine, and I decided to fake it with geometry nodes. So this is what we are going to do. Today we are going to fake this reactor core that you see here. It's looking really cool. It's looking really sci-fi, and it's looking a lot like how would you say that? It's looking a lot like a sun core, and well, the viewport is not giving it justice. It's not making it look right because of the slow frame rate, but you get things moving around and you have deformation on the surface and all the stuff like that. And part of it is done in the material, but part of it is done in the geometry nodes. And I'm going to show you that part. As you can see, it has substance and it has volume and stuff like that. And that's because we use some tricks. I'm going to show you how I did it. And I'm also going to do a sneak peek on the material because I think it's needed for this project. Anyway, this is the finished project that you can download from Gumroad if you feel like supporting this channel or you want to play with this cool project or both. Thank you very much if you decide to do that. Also, big thank you for all of you that are subscribing, commenting on the videos, liking the videos. This is also really helpful. So let's close this one and go to where we left off. This is our project so far. We recreated all the other parts, and it's time to go to this project and do the geometry of this one. And for that, I'm gonna use another geometry nodes tree. So let me do mesh icosphere, and I'm gonna open these properties. Let's do like 4 subdivisions, and that should be fine. Let's do a shade smooth, and then you can go to this add modifier. Let's unpin this one. You can add the geometry nodes by doing this, and I'm gonna do this GN sun core reactor core. Excellent. First thing that I want to do for this is to add a material. I'm gonna call this one placeholder material, and I'm gonna show you immediately why I want to do this. So let me switch to material preview. I am switch to shading tab. One thing that I want to do for this material is to change the mode to alpha hashed, so we get transparency. And then I'm gonna use a texture, Musgrave texture with node Wrangler add-on Control T to get the mapping. And I'm gonna Control Shift click on this to see the texture. I'm gonna add some details to it, play a little bit with the scale and play with the dimension till I get something like this. This is just a placeholder, it's not the final thing. But now I'm gonna use this one for the alpha. So if I plug the material now, as you can see, we get this effect. And that's what I want, because now if we overlay some other orbs inside and we move it by rotating it, we will get a very cool effect, as you will soon see. So this is our setup so far. Let me close this tab to get more space, and let's see. First thing first, let's duplicate the geometry. We have this input group. This is something that I don't think I did in a tutorial so far, using the actual geometry, not generating instead of geometry nodes. So it's something new. And let's do instance on points. So this will be our instance. Let's plug it here, and we need some points. And what will be those points? Well, let's use a mesh line, and I'm gonna plug it here. 10 is too much. Let's use just 5. I don't actually want this positioning from this one. I just want to control it in another way. So I'm gonna do a scale for this. Let's do utilities, random value, plug this one into the scale, and 0 to 1 it's good. Now we can play with the seed and get different values. If we choose to go to wireframe, you see what's going on. We have these overlapping spheres. By effect, it's not quite great for now because they overlap perfectly, I mean the texture. But if we take this random value, we duplicate it, switch it to vector, and do a rotation of 360 degrees, minus and plus. This is radians, and tau it's code name for that 360 degrees radians full circle. If I plug it here and disable this, immediately you see where the depth of this geometry comes from, because now, even though they share the same material, they start to look different. If we go here for a bit, just fast, you can do animation on this by rotating this stuff around in a procedural way, and that can create some very cool effect. And I did something like that in the final video. But there is something else that I want to do. I want to add those deformation on the surface of the mesh, and the way to do that is to take some of these instances and deform them. So how can we do this? Well, let's get to that point. I think it's point number 4, mask instances and deform them. And if we want to separate something, we can do a geometry, separate geometry. And of course, then, because we want the entire thing, we will do a join geometry. But we separate it based on what? Let's create a mask. Let's use for that the index. And now I want to use a compare node, not clump. Utilities, compare node. Switch this one to integer, plug this one here, and say I want to select all the instances that are less than a value. So now we have nothing. But if we do something like this, let me cut the mask, and we have this index, integer less than something, and plug this one here, and change the mode of this one to instance. Immediately we see we have here some instances, and here we will have the rest of the instances, something like this. So now with the geometry separated in 2 parts, so having something like this and something like this, we can play with it. So let's do a geometry set position on this part, and if we push it like so, not that much, let's do like 2 meters, you see what's going on. Now we have this geometry separated, and we can play with it and deform it as much as we want. So in order to deform it, we have to turn the instances into real geometry to have access to the points. And for that, we have this nice node realize instances. Awesome. Now let's do our deformation. How can we do that deformation? Well, you have a lot of ways to do it. I'm going to use a noise texture. So let me plug this noise texture here, and let's plug it into this offset. And I'm going to close this geometry so we can see what's going on. Immediately we see something happening here, but as you can easily notice, it's moving around, and I don't like that. So an easy fix for that is to do a little bit of vector math and subtract 0.5, because this is the range of this node from 0 to 1. So if we do this, it's basically gonna fix our movement problem. So now we can play with these values to get something interesting, and you can play as much as you want with this to get whatever result you want. Awesome. So now if we activate this, as you can see, we get this result. Without this node, we get the geometry moving away, but with this node, it stays in place and it's deformed very nicely. And of course, after all of this, we can do a material, set material, and do a placeholder material. And once we did this, a cool tip, you can just delete this material. It's gonna be there, used by these geometry nodes. So if you want to use an object to hold all your materials, you can do that, no problem. You don't have to have it on the geometry. One more thing that I want to show you on this, I didn't do it on the final project, but I want to show you how to do it. Let's say you want to animate this geometry here, this deformation. You have two ways. You can either do this, turn it into a 4D, and using, let's say, input scene time frame, and plug it here, and then you get this deformation. Of course, you can use a utilities math node, switch it to divide or multiply, and control the speed of this. So let's say speed, and now you get this deformation. Let's do like 100, animated. And this in conjunction with animating the texture itself, it's going to give you a very, very nice fake volumetric sun effect that it's going to look awesome. So that's one way. If you don't want to use this 4D and you want to keep it on 3D, you can do input position, plug the position into this vector, and then do like vector math, and do whatever, something like this. You're gonna get the same result because you are basically playing with the position of this. So this is how you can deform this mesh, how you can make a fake sun effect. I think it's looking awesome. Of course, if you go to your shader, you can play with this material. It has to be on an object in order for you to have access to it and modify it. And let's say you can do something else like shader emission and shader where are you transparent BSDF. Delete this node and Control Shift click to mix these two shaders, plug it into the surface, use this as a mask, and immediately you get this result. Or you can just swap this stuff around, and you can change the color of your emission to whatever. And of course you can do then a converter color ramp, plug it here, and increase the empty parts, something like that, if you want, and then you get this result. So if you go like 8 and the strength like, I don't know, some value, you get this cool looking sun effect that actually has some substance even though it's static. And like I said, you can play with the rotation, so you can do like input a value node. Let's bring the frame in, and I'm gonna plug this one into the rotation, and you get this effect. Of course, you want to control this math, divide by 50, and then you get something like this once you play the animation. You have the texture moving, and you have the geometry moving, and you get this really cool fake volumetric sun that has some substance. And if you go to the geometry nodes here and you play with the seed of this one, you get something different. And if you play with the seed of this one, you get something different. You can play as much as you want and you will get different results, as you can see. So that's it for this project. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope that you learned some cool stuff following this lengthy series of 9 tutorials. I had a lot of fun making this project, so I hope you had a lot of fun watching it and recreating it. So until the next video, have a nice day and happy blending!